Thank you so much, Shivesh, for the invitation. And it's a pleasure to be talking to the smartest kids in the next generation. I usually teach people who are in their 20s and beyond. So it's nice to see the fresh faces that are coming from the competition. And congratulations to all of you for having done so well. I'm just curious, can everybody just type just their city name in the chat? I'm curious, city name and state name, because I might not know some of the smaller cities. I'm just curious where everybody is. Yeah, amazing. It's really, we can see all of India is represented from all around. So congratulations to all of you, and best luck for the next round. And of course, irrespective of who wins the final awards, you're all winners, and you have a great future ahead of you. So it's a privilege to get a chance to talk. So first of all, thank you very much again for inviting me to talk to this bright group of children from all over India. And the topic for the day is social entrepreneurship. And I'm also going to talk more broadly a little bit about this concept of employing business as a force for good. And of course, if some of the things are not clear, we can have a Q&A at the end. But let me just introduce myself a little bit. I'm from India. I live in Singapore. I grew up in Haryana. I went to school at model school in Rohtak, and then I did my bachelor's in computer science from IIT Delhi. Then I went to the US. I did my master's and my MBA at Georgia Tech, worked for a few years, then decided I really wanted to become a professor because that was my passion. So for that, you have to do a PhD. So I went back, I did my PhD at Harvard in Boston. And then for the last 17 years, I've been here at INSEAD, which, as Shivesh mentioned, is a business school with campuses mainly in France and Singapore, right? So I'm normally based in Singapore, but I often travel to France as well to teach. And so the conversation that I want to have is, normally we don't think of business people or business school people. And when we talk business school, this is like MBA, right? So in India, typically people do MBA after they do college. And the motivation for a lot of people is, hey, if you do MBA, you make a lot of money, right? So that is how very often people think of MBA, that yes, engineer is fine, but if you do engineering and MBA, you will make even more money. And so that's how typically the conversation goes. And we normally don't think of business or business schools as some place where we would talk about impact. And when I use the word impact, I mean social impact or environmental impact, meaning the contribution you have for society. But one of the things that's happening a lot today, if you really follow the conversations around us, is these two conversations are coming together. So in the past, people used to say, if you want to contribute to society, you have to go to a nonprofit, you have to go to a charity. But if you want to make a lot of money, you become an entrepreneur, you run a business, right? But increasingly, more and more people are saying, how about both? Can you become an entrepreneur, but at the same time become an entrepreneur, maybe who will make money, but also at the same time is thinking about contributing to issues related to society, right? And I saw the ideas, some of you had ideas about, elders, idea about pollution, idea about education, healthcare, poverty. And of course, charities and governments do very important work in this space as well. But increasingly, businesses are also getting involved, right? Because they see it as an opportunity for doing business, but also as an opportunity to make a positive contribution, because more and more people are asking businesses, hey, you're causing so much pollution, you're the reason for so many inequalities. So how do you actually do something positive for the world? So that's a conversation that's becoming more common. And one of the pioneers in a way to make this conversation mainstream is, you might have heard the name of this gentleman, Professor Muhammad Yunus, who won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2006. He's from Bangladesh, and he formed this social enterprise called Grameen Bank. And the idea was that normally banks only provide products and services for middle class and upper class people. So he said, no, we are going to create an institution which is providing, banking services for the poor people of the world, starting with Bangladesh. And so here he's also writing, in a way, he's challenging people that criticize business and say business is just about making money and doesn't care about charity, to say, hey, if you're really a socially conscious person, why don't you try to run a business in a way that achieves social objectives? Because you might be able to contribute in ways sometimes charities can't. Because the challenge with charities is, you typically depend on fundraising, you have a certain amount of money, you spend it on people you're trying to help, and when the money runs out, you can't do anything more. While if you're a business, and if you're able to find a way in which you are able to make money while at the same time helping people, then you don't need to depend on somebody's charity to carry on your work. You can continue helping others over and over as long as you find a clever way of doing it. And that's what we want to talk about briefly. And I want to start with an example, which is, not just in India, but in the world recognized as one of the best social entrepreneurship examples, which is a healthcare chain based in South India. It's called Aravind Eye Care. Anybody who's heard of it, just say yes in the chat. I'm just curious if anybody has seen. Okay, so there's a few people that have heard. Oh, many people. So that's great. And for those of you who might not be aware, let me, for a few minutes illustrate what they do. So this is basically, a hospital chain which says we are running this chain of hospitals not just to make money for the people that started this chain or own this chain, but for reaching as many people as possible, especially poor people. Because it turns out that there's millions of people in India and in the world that are blind for reasons that can easily be avoided with the surgery that just takes a few hundred rupees, at most a few thousand rupees, right? Simple cataract surgery, many of you might have seen your grandparents or somebody go through that surgery, which really improves the vision. It's a very simple surgery, but a lot of people are not even aware of that, or might not even have the money of a few hundred rupees that might be needed, right? And so this was started by Dr. V, who was a doctor himself. And, a lot of people in his extended family worked there. And, this was a bunch of doctors that said, yes, I want to be a doctor, but I want to be a doctor because I want to help people, not just to make money. Because, you can go work in a big hospital in a big city and make a lot of money when you're a doctor. But they said, no, we are going to build a hospital chain that is targeting the poorest people, even if we don't make so much money. But we are still going to run it as a business, because then we don't need to depend on charity, right? We are going to just make enough money so that the chain can keep on working, and we can keep on serving more and more people. And so in particular, Dr. V was inspired, he's a very spiritual man, or was, he passed away many years ago. He was inspired by this idea of spirituality. At the same time, he says, okay, yes, I'm a spiritual person. Yes, I want to do good, but I can still learn from companies like McDonald's who know how to run a really efficient business. Because if I can run a hospital chain that very, very efficiently, I can give really low prices to people and I can help more people, right? So that was his approach. And he was not making any money out of this chain. So the big focus at Aravind, first of all, is, just because we are, in our goals charitable, doesn't mean we won't run like a good business, right? They really run an efficient business. The person running them, at least a few years ago, was an MBA from a top business school in the US. This picture is an example of their operating theater, where everything is planned very carefully in terms of keeping the operations efficient, the way McDonald's or Toyota would have their factory as being efficient. At the same time, their goal was, we also want to build an organization where people are driven not just by money, but by passion and compassion and wanting to do good. And so they focused a lot actually on hiring people, especially nursing staff from the same communities that they were trying to serve. And when they recruit and when they train people, they stay very focused on how are these people actually going to serve with a passion rather than just how much money. Of a puzzle in a way is some of it was about, okay, how do we serve the poorest people? And he says, well, if about 50% of the people that come to my hospital can afford a surgery because I have a reasonable, price point, so at least the middle class people can afford it. And if I can save enough money out of the money they give me, maybe about half of the patients I will be able to do surgery for free. And that's what Aravind does. So every year they do about 500,000 surgeries, out of which 250,000 surgeries actually are done for free for the poor people. Not only that, they actually go out of their way to say, a lot of people who live in rural areas, they might be scared to coming to the city. So they might not be aware of, these surgeries, or they might not have the money. So they actually set up camps in villages, and they even do screening in the villages, and people that they need surgery, they pay for them, they arrange buses for them, they arrange food for them, a place to sleep at night for them to come to the city and get the surgery, right? But this whole thing runs as a business, and that's the point of social enterprise. They don't depend on charity. They're running a really efficient business with a goal, not just to make money, in fact, not to make money at all in this case, because all the money is put back into business. But every year they get almost 5 million outpatient patients. And that's why there's no wonder, it's recognized as one of the best social enterprises from India across the world, not just in India. So this is an example to me about social entrepreneurship. So to me, social entrepreneurship is about the process of coming up with more effective and sustainable solutions to critical but neglected societal needs. And the difference between social entrepreneurship and mainstream entrepreneurship comes really from this last part, which is critical and neglected societal needs, right? So mainstream entrepreneurs, if you're making the next mobile phone, right, you're going to say, is this a financial opportunity? Is there a big market out there? Can I make a better phone than my competitors? And can I make money for many years? Right? On the other hand, in social entrepreneurship, you'll also ask a question: how critical is this need? And how much impact can I have? How many people can I reach out that normally would not be served by business? How much difference do I make in their lives? And if I help them, is there a way to help them in a way that they don't depend on my help every year? I help them, but I bring them to a point where then in future, the problem is solved and they can take care of themselves. So I'll quickly give one more example, which might be a little bit modern, especially for those of you, who are excited about new technologies, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and all of that. This is Leila Jana, who unfortunately passed away of cancer last year. But she was the daughter of, she was American, but she was the daughter of Indian couple that had immigrated to the US. And after her education in the US, she worked in mainstream business, and she was managing a big call center, I think in Mumbai. And then she said, a lot of what she noticed was there's a lot of people who were coming from all across different segments of society and working in these call centers or outsourcing centers and saying, hey, this is interesting. This is a new kind of career opportunity that people have. Can I build a business? And she built a business called Sama. It used to be called Sama Source. That can I build a business where I will actually explicitly go and employ the poorest people, right? And what I'll do is I'll employ the poorest people, or the other segment she went after was women who were maybe trying to get back into the job market and were not able to find a job. And I'm going to train them. And I'm going to train them and bring them back in the workforce to get them an appropriate work opportunity. And hopefully from there, they can launch a career, right? So the focus again, notice she was again building a business, but the focus was, in this case, helping the people that would normally not have good jobs get good jobs. And she says, the problem in the world is not that, poor people are not capable. It's just that they just don't have the opportunity. And I will give them the opportunity and bring them to a point where they can have excellent lives ahead of them. And so what she did was, she says, okay, I could employ them in some way that gives them local jobs and makes a little bit of money. But instead, I'm going to employ them in the more cutting edge jobs, for which, they're working on outsourcing projects for companies like Google and Microsoft and so on, because there's more money to be made in those projects. So I can pay them higher salaries. And so this is an example of one of those projects where, normally we talk about AI and self-driving cars and computers are doing everything. But the reality of those of you who might be reading more about AI is, for AI to work, you need high quality data. For having high quality data, you first need people to be involved and help prepare high quality data. For example, in taking pictures and labeling, okay, in a way, training the algorithms, oh, this is how the driving lanes look, and this is a car, and this is a pedestrian. So if tomorrow you have a Tesla self-driving car with an algorithm, that algorithm should be able to recognize, where it can go, where it cannot go, when the car needs to slow down, and all of that, right? So this is one example. Another example is they worked with another social enterprise called Vulcan, which was saying, okay, we have hours of footage of hours of video of people, with cameras who have taken scenes in forests. And now we want to use some algorithms to figure out where are all the animals so that we can keep track of the animals. And this is another of those things that algorithms can be very powerful, but in the beginning, they need help in getting trained, for which you need a human being to help our algorithm figure out, this is a zebra and this is an elephant and this is a lion, and this is how they look like in day, this is how they look like in night, and all of that. So by getting these people involved in these tasks, she's hoping to improve their lives. And so, Aravind and Sama are not the only ones. These are some of the other examples I use a lot in my teaching of people who are building businesses, but building businesses with a view not just to make money, but also saying, I'm deliberately going after an important problem. And the two examples I gave are poverty, the problems of poverty, but you can imagine environmental problems, you can imagine mental health issues, you can imagine, health issues, nutrition issues, women's empowerment, and so on, right? So that's the question that, all of these organizations and all of these businesses are saying is, it's not enough for me to say, how much money do I make? I'm also going to ask the question, how much impact do I have, right? Because at the end of the life, I want to look back at my 30, 40, 50 years and say, what have I achieved? How I made the world different, right? And so that's the question. And so the point here is, a lot of us, what we do is we are very focused on our careers as the place where we'll make money. And this happens among businessmen all the time as well, right? So we'll make money, and then with the money that we'll make, we will give a little bit to charity, and that's how we will do good. Or we will do some volunteering on the weekend and so on. But the challenge a little bit that people are posing to all of us these days is saying, how about if you think of your entire career as a way where yes, it's perfectly normal to want to make money, but at the same time, you're thinking of, can you find a way of making money where you're also contributing the most to society? And doing that requires not just working from intuition, but also combining your passion with sort of really hard thinking about how do you contribute, right? So in particular, I would encourage you to go to this website called 80,000 Hours. Not now, I mean, you can go now as well, but don't start reading it too much right now. The point of this website is an excellent resource which was found by a bunch of students that graduated, I think, from Oxford University in the US, saying, look, on average, you have about 80,000 hours of working life, right? On average, people work about 40 years, and on average, people work about 2,000 hours a year. Are you really going to spend those 80,000 hours saying, hey, this is just for making money? I hate my job. I hate going to office, but this is how I pay the bills. Versus you will ask yourself, what am I doing in these 80,000 hours? Can I find a way where in these 80,000 hours, yes, I make the money, I achieve my other goals, but I also, enjoy my time there. And I also contribute to society through what I do in those 80,000 hours, not just what I do through charity or on the weekends and so on. Right. So the challenge then, in a way, a summary of some of this, and I'll stop in about 2-3 minutes, is to ask these 3 questions, right? First is, what are my passions and goals? And it's perfectly fine to say, of course, I want to make money. Most of us do. Some might not. But, what is the aspiration there? But is that the only thing that you care about? Or are there other things also that you care about? Then saying, what are you good at? Maybe I'm good at math. Maybe I'm good at science. Maybe I'm, good at arts. Maybe I'm good at music, right? And is there a way you can find to combine your passions with being able to make money, but also using those skills to solve an important societal problem? Now, what's a societal problem you could solve? Again, this is I'm sure you have some ideas, but it's useful to go to the United Nations website for Sustainable Development Goals. There's a lot of information there about what progress has been made in the past 20, 30, 40 years overall across the world, including you will find country by country or issue by issue, and what else needs to be done. And you find what resonates with you, but where you can also positively contribute, right? So just to then finish with two quotes for a little bit of inspiration. The first thing that Mahatma Gandhi said many, many years ago, I think it still holds true today, right? It's easy to be overwhelmed. Look at climate change, and we have the climate conference going on in Glasgow right now, or inequality and so on. But I think this quote is still true, which is the difference between what we do and what we are capable of doing would suffice to solve most of the world's problems. I think it just needs more people to think how they can be positively contributing to the world, rather than just sort of being not caring about that. And the last thing I want to say is, and this takes time, but it's useful to build this way of thinking as well. There's a big pressure around us, and to be honest, I had faced this as a child. When I was at school in India, I used to love the idea of being a teacher. I didn't have a guts to become a teacher because everybody was saying you can't make money when you're a teacher. I used to love physics. I decided not to study physics, and I studied computer science because people said in physics you can't make money. Now, maybe it was the right decision, maybe it was the wrong decision, but it was also influenced too much by people around me. And I think it's okay. Every person makes their own choices, and at a minimum, you should think, what is your life goal, and are you really living the best possible life that you? So I'll stop here, and sorry because of the technical issues at the beginning, ran a little bit late, but I'm more than happy to stay back and have a discussion with anybody who'd like to ask anything.
Jasjit, this was so fantastic, right? And you touched on so many points in such a short time, about 20-25 minutes, and you touched on, I really like the equation, right? The one that you said that, society without your involvement minus society without your impact, right? So wonderful way to put things out there. And also the Ikigai model, and I'm sure all boys and girls would have taken different messages, right? There were so many examples, and we have some great questions in the chat box, and I want to sort of just give me a second. I want to go to the first question which came from, who was the first one? Sanvi, right? So Sanvi, would you want to speak? Unmute and ask your question.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, sir. I'm Sanvi Mopatra. I'm having a question, sir. As an entrepreneur or a social entrepreneur, we face a lot of difficulties when we are starting up mainly. Or when we are having in the middle of the time many losses and all the things. So how can we make attraction towards the customer for our product or for our thing which we are telling and giving message to them, or for the fundraisers which we spend on our business purposes, and all sorts of other problems like in startup person faces?
So that's of course a very big question, and we could have a complete course about it. But one of the reactions I would just say is, I think it's very important as an entrepreneur not to start with the product. You have to start with the need. You have to first understand who are you trying to help. And this is not even about social impact. Even if you're trying to help a rich person, the question you have to ask is, what problem is there in their life that you're trying to solve? Because if you just make a product first and then try to push it just by giving more ads or giving discounts and so on, it's never going to become very successful unless it's really solving some important problem. So that's one thing. That's the only quick answer I can give. We could have a whole lecture on entrepreneurship beyond that. But,
fantastic. And just to reinforce to every student who are here, we are in fact for the last 2 days, perhaps the focus has been to look at the problem. What problem are you solving? Excellent. Right? And we are bringing multiple perspectives there for everyone to go back, and so these students, they have done fantastic job. Most of them, they have done some product or prototype. Some of them, they are running ventures, and it's very important to go back and really look at what is the problem that we are solving and for whom, right? And that's the exercise that is going on.
And why is your solution better than the solution that other people are offering, right? That's the other side.
Fantastic. So this is the question that perhaps we are going to delve today after your session, and right, we have Vedant who has a question, and Vedant Harlalka, please unmute and ask your question.
Let Vedant go first.
Vedant. Yes. Okay. So there are two. Okay. So can you unmute and ask questions?
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much. First of all, I love the session and the points that were made. So my query here is, for something like an idea where it gives blind people a better sense of their surroundings, how to go about that on the sense of business strategy and make it a self-reliant ecosystem by being a social entrepreneur? Because such a thing, I tend to feel it's very relevant and necessary in today's society, but I don't see it fitting in anywhere. Like, many of these angel investors and all who want to invest and they're expecting a return, and this isn't looking like it's going to give any substantial return. And on the other end, the NGO side of it, I don't think any NGO will want to invest in developing such a product.
So I think there's a distinction, right? So there is two kinds of businesses in a way that fall within the social entrepreneurship umbrella. One are those that would be able to make as much money as any other business, right? So you can then invest, if you are able to find a clever model, right? And one of the examples I had in one of my slides was a company called M-Copa. If you Google it, M-Copa, M-Q, right? So that's a renewable energy inclusive business in Kenya, right? So what does it do? It has a pay-as-you-go model for solar lighting and solar power to rural households. And it has found a way that, once you scale up, you are able to make enough money, even if you're just charging, the poor households 50 cents a day for them to use the solar lamps that you installed in their houses, which, you control remotely. So if you have a business like that, ultimately you will get investors. On the other hand, you might deliberately have chosen to run a business for, the hardest to serve communities, for the most critical needs, where it is very hard for you to offer that much financial return. In that case, you should be looking not for the mainstream investors, but maybe you should go after, angel investors, venture philanthropy, or what is called concessionary impact investors. Because a lot of people are now investing money with a view of having impact and willing to accept lower returns. But I think it's a matter of finding where you fit. And very often you don't know that in the beginning, because the reality is even mainstream entrepreneurs, right? Amazon was not making money for 5-10 years. Facebook was not making money. So And even Sama, the second example I gave today after Aravind, right? Now it got venture capital funding. I think just a few weeks or months ago, it got 75 million investment from a VC. So Series B, right? So that's a sign that they are coming now. It took them 13 years to get there, but now they're at a point where the mainstream investors are taking them seriously. But 5 years ago, people would have said, yeah, you're helping these poor people, but you're not going to make money. And so it's a little bit of, I think very often what people say is you need a lot more patience with social entrepreneurship. It doesn't mean you won't make money, but it might take much longer for you to come to a point where you can build it up to a point where you can also make money. So that's the other way to think about it.
No, fantastic. And I think the distinction that Dr. Jasjit is making is, very often when we think in terms of social entrepreneurship, we get blindsided and we say that there's only charitable business which is social entrepreneurship, and that might not be the case, right? There could be, and if you look at all the businesses that he discussed, right, there are variety of high social impact based businesses which can still have profitable business model. Perhaps it might not have 30% IRR or 24% IRR or return kind of scenario, but still they have a huge value, right? And start thinking in terms of Aravind Eye Care or even Grameen or any one of the names that he took, right? So be, don't paint all the businesses in the same brush. Anish,
the other extreme, I do want to point it, the other extreme is think about Tesla. Tesla
Right.
today is the most valuable car company. And Elon Musk is, he wants to make money, but he's very passionate about the climate issue, right? So there is a social agenda. Now, I wouldn't call him a social entrepreneur, perhaps, but the point is more and more entrepreneurs are building in a societal agenda and also take it as an opportunity to build successful businesses.
Right. Right. Anish Raman, would you unmute and ask your question?
Yeah, sir, sure. So like we know that, let's say we built a product, right? So now we should check whether the people in need like the product or not, because that's what actually matters, right? So how do you figure that out? I'm asking that because in my project, there are more people who are in need than who require than who want to volunteer. So that's why I wanted to ask.
So I'm not sure why you said you made a product and now you're figuring out who needs it. Well, you should have checked with the need before you made the product, isn't it? And normally they go hand in hand. And this is where, and maybe, Shivesh, you've talked about it. One of the most common tools people use these days is design thinking. If you Google design thinking, you'll find a lot. And maybe you've talked about this already in the course.
We had Jean Litka from Darden yesterday.
Okay, excellent. Right. So typically design thinking would be something that in the very early stages of your venture, it's about quick prototyping, minimum viable product, getting feedback and improving. It's not about, I have the product, now I need to figure out who can use it, right? It has to co-evolve. Your understanding of your customer and your development of the product have to happen together rather than one happening before the other.
Right, Jasjit, I think Anish, he put a great question and he somehow has missed. I'm asking on his behalf. It's a great question. How do I know if I'm creating impact through social entrepreneurship? What are the signs? What are the signals?
Okay. Yeah, so normally what happens whenever people do social entrepreneurship is there's a lot of measurement, right? So in the case of Aravind, for example, they would track what fraction of the people that they are getting in are people that are making so little money that they could not have gone to a regular doctor. In the case of Sama, they have actually done recently what is called a randomized controlled trial in collaboration with MIT, where they very carefully design a study to figure out exactly how much difference are they making in terms of the income levels of people. Imagine, again, going back to my equation about impact, right? If Sama didn't exist, what kind of incomes would these people be making versus, now that they exist, they work with Sama, how much more is their income? And very often people are looking at applying methods like experimental methods, even that you study in science, about having, a treatment group and a control group and saying how much is the difference between the two. Those are being applied to issues related to impact and development economics. And if you remember, Abhijit Banerjee, who won a Nobel Prize together with Esther Duflo and Michael Kramer 2 years ago, that was all about measuring whether or not you're having impact. So impact, it's not just about the stories or the intuition, it's about actually collecting systematic data and tracking how much difference are you making.
Great. There are plenty of good questions. How much time do you have?
I'm flexible. It depends on how much patience do you have.
Okay, great. So we can go on for another 10 minutes. Absolutely,
Okay.
right. Yeah. I'm just scrolling up a few of the questions. I don't want to miss on the questions. Okay, Ritik Bhatt, would you like to go? Ritik, I'm unmuting, yeah.
Uh, thank you, sir. So basically, my question is, being a solo entrepreneur, right? Being a solo high school entrepreneur, I don't have contacts. Like I'm a solo, right? I don't have any contacts. Like even you said setting up a business, and even yesterday, sir said about setting up a business. You need contacts, right? Yesterday they said, a doctor came up with a collaboration with NASA. I cannot be like, hey NASA, can I have a satellite or something? I cannot do that, right? I'm a solo, I don't have contacts, right? So how can I build up a team, or how can I build up contacts, right? So that I can have people with suitable suitable skills, such as I am not really good at financial or accounts, right? I might be the main guy behind the idea, but I'm not really good at financial accounts and managing, and marketing skills, right? So being a solo, how can one build up a team and expand their business?
Okay.
So, I'll give my reaction, and, Shivesh is perhaps even more of an expert on these topics than I am. But, in terms of academic research, I'll say, a couple of impressions, and some of which are based by academic research. The first is, generally, even before you build broader context, you have to think about building your own team, and sort of staying solo for too long is dangerous, because getting, for example, funders normally get very worried when they're funding an enterprise that critically depends on Ritik Bhatt. And they're saying, if Ritik Bhatt tomorrow goes, my money is gone, right? They want to see 2, 3, 4 people in the pipeline, ideally with a co-founder already, or at least a strong leadership team, saying, if Ritik says tomorrow, I'm fed up with this, I'm leaving, we don't want our money to disappear. That's one point. The other is, and I know, this is a tough one, but in general, what I've seen is, of course, there are success stories of the 20-year-olds that build great businesses, but entrepreneurship generally is a long process, right? So it takes time. And you can't get too impatient about scaling up and raising big money and so on too early, because that, you have to be prepared that it's going to be a long journey and the context will slowly build up. The other thing, just purely in terms of academic evidence, what is true is that a lot of entrepreneurship comes from people that have actually worked in large companies for a few years, right? So yes, there are some great stories about, Bill Gates dropped out of college and Zuckerberg built Facebook while he was at Harvard. But if you look at data systematically, then a lot of the successful entrepreneurship ventures come from people that have worked in other businesses, even if for a few years, because that in a way builds the nuances of knowledge as well as the context. I think a lot of the context come from them. The other context that a lot of people use, obviously, is who they go to college with. And to be honest, Shivesh and I both know this, right? A lot of people, because we're in a WhatsApp group from our IIT group, right? So you can see there's a lot of contacts that happen, business deals that happen among these people because they're friends. There is like 25 years of trust between people, and it would happen. So yeah, I mean, So I think hang in there. You need patience, long-term horizon, and some will
Great
come
point.
naturally. The other is seek out diversity. That's the other thing people say, which is don't surround yourself with people that are just like you, right? Both in terms of whether it's your interest, whether it's your gender, whether it's your school, whether it's your caste, religion, whatever. I think if you want to be an entrepreneur, the more you surround yourself with people that are different from you, the faster your progress.
Jasjit, I think we got two gems in this answer, and I noted it down. Staying solo for too long is risky, and seek out diversity. My two, great messages from you. Siddharth Gopal, would you unmute and ask your question?
Hello, sir. Am I audible?
Yes.
So my question is, typically when we start a business, the lower strata of society are like, we have a trust deficit between the rural people or the lower strata of society and the business, because they feel that they are taking advantage of them. So when we build a social business, how do we just bridge this gap?
Jasjit, you got the question?
No, because the voice was breaking at my
Right, he says his question written is fairly good, right? See, how do you address the trust deficit that people in lower strata of society might typically have when you are launching a social business? It's a fair question, right?
So the general point is any time that holds anyway in product development, it holds particularly in product development for low income society. You have to spend months immersed in the community. You cannot be sitting in Bangalore, or you can't be sitting in Silicon Valley designing products for people sitting in Arunachal Pradesh or Odisha or Kenya, right? You have to, or part of your team has to be there physically, right? And this is where design thinking, needs analysis, problem understanding comes from, right? Unless you have really spent time with them, the trust deficit is for a very good reason, because then that's exactly what happens, which is you end up pushing products that they don't need. And a classic example of that is not as a business, but as a development project was a project called One Laptop Per Child. It was a huge development project. A bunch of people at MIT said, we are going to come up with a laptop that's less than $100, and then every child in the world will have that laptop and the education problem will be solved. It's one of the biggest educational disasters, because you can't have a bunch of rich people sitting in labs not understanding the needs of individual communities, trying to come up with these magic solutions. The solutions are very often about specific communities, specific needs, and the kids in, even within India, the needs of the kids in Haryana, what it would take to improve educational outcomes in Haryana would probably be different in Odisha, and within that, from district to district, it would be different. So it really is about being embedded in the communities, and I think the trust will naturally come once somebody sees that you've been there for months and months and years, and actually trying to understand their needs first before selling the products. But that's exactly why it's such a long journey, right?
Fantastic. It's very easy to say, hard to do, but you have to spend time on the field with the users, right?
Yep.
And I think people, they are able to see through you, right? Very often we think that we are smarter than the user. That's not the case. They are able to see through your sincerity, whether you're genuine or not. And if they see you're genuine, perhaps that trust building, it's a bridge that you cross. Sriya Jairaj Nayak, would you like to ask your question? Unmute.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Sir, social entrepreneurs' challenges often include lack of awareness among the general public, and this takes away the sustainability and survivability of the particular venture. Is there a solution for the same according to you?
So I don't know why you say takes away the survivability. You mean because they will not pay for your products because you're a social entrepreneur? Or why do you say it takes away the survivability?
Sir, because once the public lacks, when I said that the public lacks awareness, a lot of times we ourselves don't know what we need until it comes up in the market. So it takes a very long time to trust a certain product. And sometimes by the time we learn to trust it, it's gone.
I'm not sure how to quite answer that question. I mean, one of the things in general, it goes back to, right, the product should not be formed without involving a segment in the first place, right? You never form product. You don't make a product saying, hey, here's a product for India, right? You just say, here's a product that will work for this segment, it's for women between 30 and 40 of age, who are coming from the lower middle class and speak Punjabi. I don't know, so and like lots of colors or whatever, right? So and once you've done your research, then it doesn't matter if the other segments like you or not. You should have co-designed the product keeping in mind a particular segment, right? You should not be thinking of these magic solutions that nobody wants. It's better to think small but more specific, having a clear segment. This is the segment for which this product will work. I mean, that's the only reaction I can give. I don't know if this is a satisfactory one.
So that clarifies a lot. Thank you so much, sir.
Welcome.
Okay, we'll take two more. It's 4:54, right?
Sure.
I go to Harman. Harman, would you unmute and ask your question? Harman Jot.
Am I audible?
Yeah, please.
It was a great honor for me to listen to your inspiring words because I am really passionate about working for the social cause. So I had a doubt that how can we deal with the drawbacks of the topic that is social entrepreneurship, because a lot of the time I've seen the people that they actually neglect their idea, feeling that the present solutions in our society are all right and there's no need to change. So how we can tackle that?
So in social entrepreneurship, one of the things that people say is you will generally not be able to sell incrementally better products. I mean, what it takes for people to adopt a new product is a radically better product, right? So that's something to be aware of. You can't make a 10% better product. So that's the first thing. The second thing is very often you think it's a better product, right? But does the user think that as well? That's the key question, right? So think back in the old days, for a long time people were competing about, my camera is 2 megapixel, yours is 3 megapixel, somebody else is 4 megapixel. But the general population is not going to care, right? Because if I'm going to just take a simple picture, and SMS it to my friend, I just need a low resolution picture. So for high resolution picture, I would have to be very clear on who's going to adopt, right? My product might be better, but if the user is not better in a way that is useful for the user, it's not going to sell. Why will the user switch even for $10 more? You'll have to find, okay, what is the segment for which the product is better, right? So it's both of those dimensions. One, you have to be very clear whether it's an illusion that you have that the product is better, because your thing is technically better, but is it actually better in solving the need of the user is the question. But if it really is, then the second question is, it's a behavior change question. Generally, you need it to be significantly better. I'll give you a concrete example. So back to the issue of, solar lamps and solar lighting, M-COPA, but, similarly in India, in villages, right? Now it's very common to have solar lamps in villages. But in the beginning, the issue was, people say, hey, you're using kerosene. Kerosene is bad for you. It's bad for health. It has a lot less light. It is environmentally terrible, and you'll end up in the hospital. It's a fire hazard. You told all of those things to the users. Did they switch to solar? No. There's only one thing that worked to get the switch to solar. You had to come up with business model where you went to the user. You said, in your household, how much money are you spending on kerosene today? I will give you a business model in which you will be spending less than that on a per day basis on solar. And after that, solar has all of those benefits. Then solar was a huge success. As long as people were just trying to say solar is a much better product, it's a much better value, the users are stupid. No, the users are never stupid. When you think the users are stupid, that just means you don't understand the user needs.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Okay, so one last question, and this is from Gauri Gupta. Gauri, can you just give me a second? Can you yeah, please unmute and ask your question?
Sir, so if we have a functioning project, what's the best way to grow it? Like, do we launch new sub projects, or do we just continue to focus on the original project?
Could you explain your project such that it becomes more relevant?
So basically I have a project called Read to India, where we read to children in underprivileged children in rural areas, and we also give phones and Wi-Fi connections to them. So should I just continue that, or should I continue like making coloring books and stuff like that?
I think you have to start from the problem, right? So again, phone and Wi-Fi, I think they're fine. But the question to ask is, that's already a solution. That's not a problem. What problem are you trying to solve for them? Do you think by having a phone and Wi-Fi, are they going to get better education? Do you think they're going to get better jobs? Are you just trying to give them better entertainment? What are you trying to do, right? You have to start from that, and then you have to ask, was it successful, right? So, because one of the things that has happened in the past also, there have been many development projects, I think funded by UN or World Bank or something, that for a while people were thinking all you need to develop villages now is to go and give everybody free Wi-Fi. And the first thing that happens when you give free Wi-Fi in a new location is everybody's inside the internet cafe, everybody is watching a lot of movies and YouTube, and there's a lot more pornography. All of that happens before any positive benefits happen, right? So you have to understand that you're taking what is a solution in your mind, because in your mind, for you, Wi-Fi is a very important thing. But you have to understand they have a different life. In their life, how will Wi-Fi solve something and make their life better? And very importantly, at the same time, it doesn't have unintended consequences, like children who were always out playing and had good health are now just sitting at home and watching videos all the time and not even socializing with each other and don't have a life anymore, right? So I would say you can't go from, oh, I have a solution, should I continue this solution or look for another solution? You have to go back to the problem and say, are you solving an important enough problem? Then stick with it and the solution will improve. So don't get too enamored with the solution, but stick with the problem, and then try to find other ways of solving the problem if the current way is not solving it as well.
Right. So Jasjit, this has been such a pleasure to hear from you. The questions are all there, but we have another speaker who's already there at 5 o'clock, and we really wanted you to go further, but I really found it very I really found it very encouraging, very great learning for me personally. And I'm sure for everyone out here in this room, it would have been the same, right? All of us will take different things from the same words, but that's the fun of having an expert speaker. So boys and girls, can I request everyone, you're all on unmute mode, can you all give a huge round of applause to our speaker today?